Hello, fellow CIT230 classmates. My name is Sheldon Foster, and today I am going to talk about inheritance. Inheritance, according to a CIT point tutorial on the same subject, is the process by which CSS styling properties are passed from parent to child elements, even though those properties have not been explicitly defined by other means. Certain properties are inherited automatically, and as the name implies, a child element will take on the characteristics of its parent with regards to these properties. Okay, so to understand this a little bit better, we need to review the hierarchy that exists in an HTML document. Let's look here at a very simple HTML snippet. I've got a div, and inside that div I've got a paragraph, and inside that paragraph I've got two spans. This should be well familiar to all of us by now, but this is a hierarchy that could be related to a parent-child relationship. So the div in this case is a parent to the paragraph, which is its child. And if we expand it further, the paragraph would be a parent to the span, in this case, which is its child. Okay, so now, to better understand this, I think it would be useful to look at some examples of how inheritance actually works. Here we have a W3 Schools website, which is very useful for looking at tutorials and reference material in regards to web programming and actually a lot of different programming styles and techniques and languages. In this case, I'm using their Try It portion of their website, so I can type in some HTML on this side of the screen and press the Run button and see how that HTML is rendered. I'm going to hit the button because it looks like I've gone through this already, but up here on the head tag you'll notice that I've included some styling. Now typically we would keep this in an external style sheet, but because of wanting to keep it simple here, I just want to show what I've got here. And of course down here in the body we've got a div, a span which has inside of it an emphasis tag, and also an anchor tag with a link to w3schools.com. And of course we know in this case the div is a child of the body, the span and the anchor are children of the div, and the emphasis tag is a child of the span in this case. So inheritance means that whatever properties the parent has will be inherited by its children unless you've explicitly stated otherwise. So if you look up here at the style tag, you'll notice that I've commented out this section, and we will uncomment that in a bit, but for now notice that I've got a rule set for the div, and I've got a few declarations in here, but I've commented out the padding and the border for now because we're going to talk about that a little bit later. But for now, notice that I've got a font size of, let's change this to 30 pixels. Let's see if I can get that typed in better than that. So 30 pixels is the font size, and let's see what that gives us. That gives us this text over here, and you'll notice that all of the text has the same font size. The div, the span, the emphasis, and the anchor tag all have the same font size, and the reason is because, as I've mentioned, the inheritance quality of the way the HTML document works causes those properties to get inherited by the children because I haven't explicitly stated that. So if you look at this section that I've commented out, I can uncomment that section and you will see that I've got a font size specifically for the span, one for the emphasis, and one for the anchor tag. Let's run that, and you'll see that here's the div, at least the first part of the text here, and it is at the 30 pixels. The span, which is this part right here, takes on 24 pixels, except for the fact that there is an emphasis tag nested inside of it, which gets 56 pixels for the font size. And lastly, the anchor tag here, and I don't want to click on it, so it has a font size of 16 pixels. Because I've explicitly stated what those font sizes should be, they no longer inherit that property value from its parent. So this is very useful because imagine if this font size was not inherited by any of its children. This is a very simple case. I've got 3 nested elements here as its children. But imagine a regular website having thousands of elements, maybe hundreds nested at a time, or thousands even, and having to go through and explicitly state what those font sizes are because they did not inherit from its parent. That would be a lot of extra work, a lot of extra bandwidth to have to do that. And so it's very nice to be able to rely on the inheritance properties of the hierarchy. Now, one important thing to recognize, however, is that not all attributes get inherited. Let's take a look. If I uncomment out this section of padding and border properties on the div, if I run this, you'll notice that the border and padding properties get applied to the div, but they did not get applied to its children. Now, how come that is the case? Well, an important thing to understand is that not all properties are automatically inherited. Those that are inherited tend to be associated with styling the text in some way, like the color or the font size or the font styling. Those that are not inherited tend to be related more to the box model, such as the borders, the background colors, the padding, and the margins. I couldn't quite find a comprehensive list, but I'm sure, knowing how thorough the W3.org organization is, or rather the W3 organization, I'm sure that it's somewhere within their website. But I did find several user-contributed listings on Stack Overflow where the user has listed for us conveniently the different attributes that are inherited. And if you take a look at them, you'll see that they have to do with font size, style, variant, weight, so anything to do with the font, letter spacing, line height, text alignment, indentation, shadowing, and transforming on the text, white space, word break, word spacing. Most of these are related to the text styling itself rather than the box model styling, such as I mentioned, padding and margins, background colors, and so forth. Okay, now let's discuss what is called forced inheritance. There are situations where you want to explicitly set the property of a child element to match its parent without having to state what that exact value is. This is especially useful for those attributes that don't automatically get inherited. To see an illustration of this, let's take a look again at our example, and let's take the span here and let's give it a border, but rather than explicitly state that it's 4px solid blue like its parent, which could be a problem down the road, because if I change the parent to red and I wanted the span to inherit that, now we've got a problem because one's red and one's blue. So rather than state that explicitly, let's put in the keyword inherit. Now the span will inherit the border property of its parent, regardless of what that is. So if we run that, we'll see now that that border becomes red. If I change it back to blue, it becomes blue. Okay, one last thing that I want to take note of. The few sites that I looked at to research this, the inheritance, both gave some explicit warnings about the use of percentage values in parent-child relationships. And let's take a look about what that. Okay, so we're back here at our example, and what I want to take a look at, I'm going to go ahead and comment out this section here because I don't want to look at that, this styling as well. We're going to look at the font size of this div. What if I decided to, instead of 30 pixels, if I wanted to say a percentage value, say 150%? What's going to happen here is, because the div is a child of the body, which is a child of the HTML document itself, 16 pixels will get inherited down through until it gets to the div, at which point it will inherit 150%, or rather it will get set to 150% of this value, which should be about 24 pixels. So this is, the text over here is at 24 pixels. Now what if we decided to then say, okay, let's do this to the div, to the span, to the emphasis, and the anchor tag. You'll see here that the text progressively got larger, and the reason for that is because since the span in this case is a child of the div, it becomes, the font size becomes 150% of what its parent's value is. We determined that the value for the div would be at 24 pixels. So now the span will have a value of 150% of 24, which will make it 36 pixels. The emphasis tag, because it's a child of the span, will now get 150% value of that, which means that would be 36 plus 18 is 54. So 54 pixels is how large that becomes. So you need to be careful, just a word of warning, that anytime you use percentages in a situation like this, you could end up having consequences that you weren't expecting, or a result rather than what you were expecting. So that is it for this presentation on inheritance. I've got a few references listed here if you would like to go to that, or if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to put those in the discussion and I'll try to answer them the best that I can. And thank you very much.